This is the Tech Phantom, and in this video, I'm going to give you guys my final thoughts and a summary of my experience at my very first consumer electronics show, CES 2015. So the show was absolutely massive, with way too many things for me to cover. It was spread out over 4 different locations. There were a total of something like 165,000 attendees from all over the world. There were 20,000 new product announcements. So if you had a new product that you wanted to announce to the world, this was the place to do it. I was amazed by the size of the booths from the big players like Intel, Sony, Samsung, LG, Panasonic. Their booths were absolutely gigantic. Frankly, they were a little bit overwhelming. There were so many people and so many salespeople as well that were there to talk about and see the new technology and the new products and to take advantage of the giveaways that you could get at CES. That the crowds at these booths were absolutely gigantic. So unless you were there first thing early in the morning, you had to fight through a lot of crowds, big lines, and there was a lot of noise. So it was difficult to. You had to get really close to somebody, and you had to basically shout in order to be able to talk to them. And a lot of these booths too, they had a lot of both audio and visuals kind of going off to try to attract the masses. So they were very loud, very kinetic displays. That meant that the smaller companies had to do whatever they could to try to stand out and try to attract some of the crowds that were going to the big booths, to the big exhibits. So all of the companies were using little gimmicks or little giveaways to try to stand out from the crowd. And there was a video in my channel that you guys can see for Tablet Man, who was trying to attract people to the booth. So let me tell you a little bit, guys, about some of the recurring themes that I saw at CES 2015. So the first one was that curved TVs, actually curved everything was in. So there were a ton of announcements on curved TVs and even curved cell phones. This was also the year of the smartwatch. Everyone, it seemed, except for Apple, unveiled either a smartwatch or a smart band or some kind of a wearable. And actually, in my opinion, Apple may have missed the boat, similarly to how Samsung was able to come in and steal a lot of the smartphone market by coming up with the big phone, and it took Apple a long time to come up with a big phone of their own. I don't know if this is going to be the same story repeated for the smartwatch. We don't know when Apple is going to show their smartwatch, but let me tell you, some of the smartwatches that I saw addressed all of the complaints of previous smartwatches. So this may be the year that the Tech Phantom actually gets a smartwatch, because I saw some real cool ones at CES 2015. The other recurring theme for CES was increasing high-resolution content. So one of the negatives for 4K TVs is that there is not a lot of 4K content out there. So most of the large TV companies were advertising ways to have 4K content display on their TVs. So obviously there's not a lot of movies or stuff or other kind of content that's at 4K. So a lot of that 4K content is going to be streamed to the TVs through the internet. So there was a big focus on how to stream movies or contents directly from the studios because they're already at 4K. Well, this also trickled into games. Games is one of the few sources for native 4K content, or even 5 or 6K content. And that's because if you have a powerful enough PC, you can actually play at very high resolutions. And now there are gigantic large screen 4K TVs that can accommodate these resolutions. So if you have a powerful enough PC, you can actually run these games at 4K, and instead of running them in a smaller computer monitor, you can actually run them on a 4K massive, beautiful TV that were being sold at the show. So there was also a focus on not just playing games through a PC, but also to try to play games at 4K or at 2K or what they were calling full HD without the need for a PC. So there was a lot of emphasis. A lot of companies were showing devices and technologies that allow you to game from the couch. Using Android or using their own proprietary devices, so you don't need a PC, but you could still game from the couch in glorious 2K and 4K resolution. As far as appliances, cars, drones, it was amazing. There were so many devices that were using Android, iOS, or other proprietary operating systems to connect to each other and to make themselves controllable through a phone or a tablet or even a smartwatch. So there was definitely a theme going around of interconnected appliances, devices, and just being able to control lots of different things from a cell phone or from a tablet. So let me tell you guys a little bit about my highlights for the show. Because again, there's no way I could cover everything because the show was so big. My strategy was to focus on Sony and Samsung, plus gaming, and if I ran across any cool or neat little technology, I would highlight that as well. And that's hopefully you guys saw that through the videos that I posted for my CES coverage. So let's talk about Sony. They showed their OLED 4K TVs, and they were stressing how thin their TVs were, and they actually were calling their TVs super thin. Now at the bottom, the TV is like a normal, the thickness of a normal panel. It's a couple inches thick or so, but once you get up 20% from the bottom of the TV, the rest of the panel, the only thing that you see is actually the panel itself, and it almost gives you a look like the TV is floating in air in some cases. So super thin TVs that Sony was showing, they were 0.2 or 0.3 inches thick, and obviously they were 4K TVs. I was a little disappointed on the PlayStation 4. They had the PlayStation 4 area sort of in the corner of the Sony exhibit, and the big push was on remote play capabilities and on the ability to stream music or to buy movies from the Sony store. So not a lot on games. So that was a little bit disappointing on the PS4. The other thing that Sony was touting was their new cameras. These are both cameras for taking pictures and also cameras for recording video. And they were showing cameras that can record 4K content and even 8K content. And that was another thing that I was a little surprised to see at the show. It was almost like 4K was being leapfrogged, and there were a lot of companies talking about ways to capture 8K content and even show 8K content in projectors. I don't know if I saw any 8K TVs, but there were definitely some projectors and some monitors that were billed as 8K monitors. So Sony was stressing their stabilization technology, which they had included in their new smartphone, the Z2, and even on the camera app for the Z3, and of course their new smartwatches. And it was kind of cool to be there at the Sony booth when they unveiled their smartwatches and some of their accessories. As far as Samsung was concerned, I saw their nanocrystalline TVs side by side to OLEDs. According to Samsung, they're brighter than OLEDs. They're lower energy consumption than OLEDs, and they are based on a technology that has a longer history than OLED. So one of the negatives of OLEDs is that we don't know how long those TVs are going to last because the technology is kind of new. Whereas with LEDs, that technology has a longer history, and we know that those TVs can last a pretty long time. It was very cool to be there for the launch of the Galaxy Note Edge. I also got to see the Galaxy Note 4, the very large phone. I got to see the smartwatches at Samsung. And I got to sit in the Smart Lounge, so I was able to kind of relax and gather my thoughts on Samsung. As far as my product of the show, it was the 105-inch curved TV that Samsung was showing. It's an extra wide TV. It's 21 by 9, and at the touch of a button, you can go from a curved TV to a flat TV. It was absolutely amazing. It was actually 5K because of the extra pixels that you need for the extra wide TV. The other things that were pretty neat were the 3D glass, the 3D TV with no glasses, but where you can control the effect of the 3D at the touch of a button. So if you wanted a pretty strong 3D effect, you could do that. If you wanted a 2D, not a 3D picture, you can do that as well. And finally, I was very excited to see gaming laptops getting smaller, but getting more powerful and getting better screens. They had better graphic cards, better cooling. Some of them even had not only better screens with high resolution screens, but they also had touch screens. So very exciting what's coming down the line for a gaming laptop. They're still pretty expensive, but a very good option if you want to do gaming on the go. Well, that's gonna do it, guys, for CES 2015. This is the Tech Phantom signing off.